Welcome to the ACS Technical Advisory Board podcast series, where we talk all things tech including data, cyber, AI, blockchain, and Internet of Things. Meet your host, Dr. David Cook, Vice President of the Australian Computer Society's Technical Boards. David is a technology advocate dedicated to advances and progression of computing and human-computer interaction. In today's episode, David will be talking with ACS Cybersecurity Committee member, Robyn Bailey. Join us as we discuss what makes good risk-based frameworks, risk auditing and risk assessment changes, as well as cloud-native security.
Today I'm talking with Robyn Bailey. She is a 25-year veteran. She's consulted in enterprise architecture, in IT operations, in IT strategy, and I guess you could say that she's got a big technical background in terms of GRC insurance in particular. Robyn, welcome to the program.
Thanks, David. Good to be here.
I want to start by asking you about some of the challenges in terms of security, but I want to focus from you because for you, I know there's a difference between assurance and auditing. Can you explain what you mean about that?
That's right. So auditing is generally just to meet a compliance need, pretty much just to get you over, a line. Versus, I believe that ultimately what an organisation needs to look for and what the board is wanting is true risk mitigation. Ultimately, a good security profile as opposed to just meeting a compliance goal.
Because there's a difference, isn't there, between what we call these supposed professionals, I suppose, who are really just going through the motions and what I call the tick box effect. But
which is the auditing, that's right.
Yeah, and so we need something a little bit more robust than that, don't we?
Absolutely, yeah. In my time, I've seen the tick box effect, not ultimately giving the board the outcome that they need as far as a secure organisation goes. It doesn't work, and it depends on the quality of the auditor, the whether it's an audit or an assessment. Typically an assessment would look more sort of far-reaching, not just does this control exist, and you're looking at also the design effectiveness of a control versus the operational effectiveness, making sure that both sides are covered. Operational effectiveness is typically a lot more valid than just the design of a control. You can design any control. Whether it's actually implemented is another thing.
Yeah. So tell me, what makes for a good risk-based framework? What are we looking for?
So it's not just about the actual framework itself. The majority of standards and frameworks today are risk-based. 27001, SOC 2, the ISM, and so on. PCI DSS is probably one of the true non-risk-based frameworks out there today.
Because it's just about money.
Pretty much, yeah. Yep, good point. So again, a good risk-based framework enables an organisation to mitigate risk. You don't have to have all of those controls. The ISM is a really good example. You've got 800 to 900 controls in there. That's a lot of controls for an organisation to implement. They are guidelines. They're not, mandatory controls. If you don't have the technology that control talks about, you don't need to implement the control. If there's other risk mitigating controls, you talk about defence in depth, for instance. Typically, you may not just have one control to mitigate a risk. You may have 2 or 3, for instance, but you may not need 5 controls to mitigate a risk. So in that case, you don't need to implement those controls based on risk. And
you mentioned defence in depth. That's a really good one because you can marry that up with any other set of things really easily.
Exactly.
It fits nicely together, doesn't it?
Exactly, yeah. Yep.
So I want to describe something. You tell me if you agree with me, but what I see happening now is I guess I see that the nature of assessing and auditing is, I see question marks. I see small businesses who are trying to make their own decisions about things. Some of them who will do, self-assessment and say, oh yes, or even some that make, bold claims and say, yes, well, I think we're in this level 3.2, and you say, how did you do? How was the audit process? Oh no, we decided ourselves. So I guess my leading question to you is there room for us to get a little bit more maturity around this? Because I think there's an issue in terms of the culture of getting this in. It's for many businesses and boards, this is a new playing field, and some of them aren't. So we need to improve the culture of the organisation. Would you agree with that?
As far as compliance goes?
Yes.
Absolutely. And to be honest, it's not just the culture of the organisation. I think it's the culture of auditors, assessors, everybody within the process. I think because we've gone from if you look sort of 10 years ago, not many organisations, especially within Australia, were 27,001 compliant. It's only been the last 10 years that we've had a large number of organisations becoming 27,001 compliant. We've started having, anyone that does business with the federal government having to be IRAP assessed, for instance, cloud service providers, corporations, etc., not just the agencies and defence, obviously, themselves. So there's been such a growth in those compliance standards that we seem to be pushing to get so many auditors in. 27,001, for instance, really just requires a 1 week lead auditor training session and an exam. Little bit of experience behind you as well, but I feel as though the whole within Australia at least, and probably globally, the whole compliance industry is greatly growing at the moment at a rate that I don't think we're sustaining as far as skills go.
Yeah, sure. No, I think you're on the right track there. Could you describe for me the term cloud native security? What does it mean?
So we talk about cloud security and we talk about cloud native. Cloud security has, in the past, cloud is typically a lift and shift of, the on-prem infrastructure. Cloud native versus cloud is where we're talking about, CI/CD processes. Containerization is a really good example. We see most organizations these days, most cloud providers at least, implementing their services as microservices using Docker with Kubernetes orchestration, for instance. It's a lot different to on-premise systems. We're not talking about virtualization of servers, for instance, right? We typically don't have Windows operating systems, Linux operating systems, and so on. Which makes it interesting when you're auditing or assessing, providing assurance over a cloud native system, because there's a lot of technologies within cloud native that are pretty new. So you need to, an auditor really needs to understand a lot of those technologies and the processes around them as well.
So is there a need for the industry to train up a bit on this, because it's about getting auditors to understand you're operating under a different set of rules. It's not in your backyard anymore, it's in someone else's backyard, and you don't necessarily have the controls over it or the understanding of what's going on.
I believe so. It depends on the framework that's being audited. PCI DSS, for instance, doesn't really have those specific controls, neither does 27,001. When you're looking at some of the lower level frameworks, NIST, the ISM, for instance, those controls can be quite technical. The ISM, for instance, it's interesting when you try and interpret what is an operating system in cloud native. You need to look at the intent of the control, because these frameworks don't specifically talk about cloud native technologies. We typically need to interpret what the intent of the control is in a cloud native world. And to do that, you typically need the experience.
Mm. Now, we had a chat yesterday and you said to me something, I wrote it down, said, the ultimate outcome is a secure organisation with a low risk.
Absolutely. Isn't that what we all want?
Well, I guess so. I mean, what I want to know is what are the challenges in us achieving that?
Oh, wow.
Just the big ones. I mean, we haven't got all day.
A key challenge again is going to be, and I think we all know, the skills, the workforce, the people factor, not just from a end user perspective, but also security professional skills, I think, as well. And no security professional can be everything. It's very rare to find a security professional that understands every single part of security, every single part of technology, every single part of processes, for instance. You've got so many different areas of security, from GRC down to all of the tech to incident response and business continuity and all that sort of thing. So I think that's one of the big issues. To be honest, if you fix those problems, get the skills in to be able to actually understand from a technology perspective what you don't have, what you do have, I think the rest of it should fix itself. Having said that, obviously you need budget as well.
Yeah, sure. So you're a member of the National Cybersecurity Committee for the Australian Computer Society. Thank you for your service in that regard. I just wonder, is there a role for the ACS to take in terms of trying to make sure that we have better training across this, so that across the industry, whether it's auditors, assessors, or anyone for that matter, that we've got a better understanding? What should we do there?
Yes, I believe there is definitely a role. I think, one of the things that we're potentially looking at is better education programs around, getting school children educated in cybersecurity, perhaps a capture the flag type competition for school children. I believe that the ACS are putting out more information around how to get people in from other careers into cybersecurity. I think that's a really good thing to do as well. I know I've had people contact me that I know totally from outside IT or cybersecurity, asking how they can get in. And I believe there's a role for everybody. You don't necessarily need to understand technology, to do some of the roles in cybersecurity.
Yeah. Robyn Bailey, thank you for your time today.
That's okay, no problem. Good to be here.
To find out more about how the ACS is powering Australia's technology brilliance, visit us at our website, Facebook or LinkedIn. Want to get involved with the ACS technical boards? Email us at tab@acs.org.au and tell us a bit about yourself. Join us for more thought leadership, ideas and information through our other podcasts on the ACS YouTube, Facebook or on LinkedIn.